Alright guys, hello and welcome to today's lesson. This is Mr. Ludden and today we're going to have a look at sets and Venn diagrams and how they come up in your Junior Cert higher level paper. As always, any notes I make during today's lesson or any of the important things will be in the description below, so just keep an eye on that, and I'll also put a comment in the comment section with a timestamp of what I'm going to go through today. So my plan is to have a quick look and a quick recap over Venn diagrams and the symbols that are used to show you different parts of the Venn diagrams. I'll show you where to get those in your log tables, and then I'm going to do 2 exam paper questions that involve 3 set Venn diagrams, and they're slight variations of each other, but they're quite popular questions that the examiners are fond of asking. So if you can wrap your head around those 2 questions, you should be set up to answer anything about sets that will come up in your Junior Cert paper. So that's my aim by the end of this video. Before we get on to that, that Venn diagram in front of you there is quite possibly the best Venn diagram that I've ever drawn or come up with. If you do not know what that is referring to, I'm going to put a link to the song Ladbroke Grove by Tracey in the description, so have a listen to it and pretty soon you will know exactly where I'm going with that set right in front of you. Alright, let's get started. For your Venn diagrams, you do need to be familiar with quite a few symbols and how they show up in a diagram as well. So just very quickly, the set A is just everything in the set, the circle A there, so everything in yellow there, everything within the circle. The set B is everything in the opposite circle, the one denoted B. A with a little comma up above it is called the complement of A, and that means everything outside of the circle A. So you're not talking about what's inside A, you're talking about what's outside A. The same thing with B. The complement of B is everything that is outside that. A in union with B, so that's my 5th one here, is everything in set A and everything in the set B. So if you think about, if you unite 2 things, you're taking the 2 of them together, and that's the exact same when we talk about sets. It's everything in set A and everything in set B, and you've got your symbol for it there just below the diagram. And also here you've got A intersection B, and if you think about the intersection of crossroads, it's where the 2 roads meet, and that's the exact same thing in sets as well. So it's right there, right in the middle, where the set A and the set B meet. I've taken these diagrams from CorbettMaths, so I will put a link to that below as well. There's a couple of nice resources on it, so well worth checking out. This one up top is just my own add-on because this is asked as well. A/B means A without B, or sometimes it's called the difference of A and B, or A less B. But A without B I think is the best way of getting this across. It means everything in the set A, but you're not including any of the set B. So what that means is you're just sorting out this bit here. You're not including any of the circle B. Also, things to be aware of. The E symbol means is an element of, so that's just a way of saying that, like, the number 1 is in the set A. So if you were to put the number 1 here, a way of telling me that the number 1 is in the set A would be like this: 1 is an element of A. And then the opposite of that, if 1 was not in A, let's say if 1 was over here, I could put the line through it and I could say 1 is not in A, or 1 is not an element of A. The next 2, subset, If you have one set that, like let's say a big enough set that has all the numbers of a smaller set in it, then that smaller set is going to be a subset of the bigger one. Again, this comes up in one of our exam questions below, so I will highlight that with the question as a bit of context as well. Right now, all I'm worried about is that you can recognize the symbol. The second one there is not a subset of, so it's the subset symbol with a line through it, like that. The null set is the empty set, so if there's any part of your Venn diagram when you've finished filling it in that is empty, you can denote that as the null set. And it's also called the empty set, and you can also denote that with a set of empty squiggly brackets. So your squiggly brackets or your curly brackets, sometimes they're called either, they're used to denote a set. So we'll have a look at those. I'll point those out in the exam questions as well. But wherever you see those, you know you're dealing with sets. If you have a set of curly brackets with nothing in it, that is another way of telling me that you're talking about the null set. And the last one here is the hashtag A is the cardinal number of A, and that's just the amount of elements in set A. So let's say we had the set A here, just very quickly, and we had the numbers 2, 7, and 13 in there. Well, the cardinal number of A would be the amount of numbers in that set. So if we count them up, we've got 1 number, 2 numbers, 3 numbers. So the cardinal number of A would be 3 in this scenario. It's important that you are familiar with everything on this page here, because in your log tables on page 23, they do give you a lot of these symbols, but they do not give you all of them. And more importantly, they do not give you any diagrams. So on page 23 of your log tables, this is what you get. So we're not going to worry about this here. I've done that in another video. We're going to look just up at the top here, and you'll see that they give you the symbol, they give you the Irish for it, and they give you the English for it. The majority of you will be doing your exam in English, so I'm not going to talk about the Irish over here, but they just tell you what the symbol means. It's up to you to know, like in your Venn diagram, well, the intersection, that's going to be the middle part of my two sets. It's up to you to know what the union is. It's up to you to know what the difference or less is, or as I said, the without part. Symmetric difference, this triangle, this doesn't come up in your Junior Cert. So you can learn that if you want, but in regards to Junior Cert, that's not going to be asked. So I'm just going to put a line through that. For now, you don't need to know that. You've got your subset, element, and null set there as well. So basically, the log tables are giving you the bare minimum. You do need to know how your symbols line up with your diagrams and what they actually mean. It's no good going into your exam on the day and banking on page 23 of your log tables to get you out of trouble, because that's not going to happen. You do need to know and remember what's going on here. If you're a bit sketchy about what's going on there, I would spend a bit of time, if I was you, trying to remember which symbols line up with which diagram. Nearly all of the symbols in front of you will come up in the exam questions below, so we're going to get a bit of practice at those now. In 2017, this question came up, and your job was to try and put all of this information into the empty Venn diagram below. So basically what you were asked was, like the context of this question is that you had some students in 6th year and they were given a survey whether they used WhatsApp, Instagram or Snapchat, and some of them used one of the apps, some of them used two of them, and some of them used all three. Your job is to put all of this information into the empty Venn diagram. So the main thing to be aware of before you start a question like this is not to jump in straight away with the first piece of information that you see. Usually a question, like when you're given a question, you start with the first piece of information and you work your way down. But in Venn diagrams, if you do that, you may end up in trouble. The best place to start your Venn diagram, start filling it in, is the very, very middle. So if you think about it, this part here is part of the Snapchat set, it's part of the Instagram set, and it's part of the WhatsApp set. So it's where the most action is happening. It's the most exciting part of this Venn diagram. So we're going to attack that first. And in relation to the question, this means that if you were a student in here, in that part of the set, that means you use WhatsApp, Instagram, and Snapchat. So all three apps. We need to find out if there's any information up here that tells us about students who use all three apps, and see if we can put a number in the middle here. So if we go down to the very, very bottom, we can see that 8 students have all three apps. So the first piece of information that we're going to put in is that 8 slap bang in the middle there. And you'll see in a minute or two why we start in the middle of a Venn diagram and work our way out. Seeing as we have that 8 there, that's the first number we've put in, and that's the first piece of information that we've used. I'm going to put a line through here so that I don't get confused with it again. That bit there is done. Now, after this, we are going to concentrate on, I suppose, the next most exciting part of the Venn diagrams, and that's this part, and this part. So if you think about it, if you were in this part here, that means you use Instagram and WhatsApp, but unfortunately you're not in the Snapchat set. So you only use WhatsApp and Instagram, you don't use Snapchat. So we're going to try and find out about the students who use 2 out of the 3 apps. And if you look at the 3 pieces of information here, you can see that we are talking about students who use combinations of 2 out of the 3 apps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the first one here, WhatsApp and Instagram, and I'm going to work my way down because I want to talk about the last one there, the ex-students that have WhatsApp and Snapchat but not Instagram, but I want to talk about that at the end. I want to get this one here done first. So 14 students have WhatsApp and Instagram. First of all, I'm going to go to my diagram and just highlight the area of the Venn diagram that they're actually talking about there. So WhatsApp and Instagram is going to be this part here. So this here is where the WhatsApp group and the Instagram group overlap. And the mistake that some students make is they see the number 14 and they say, oh, 14 students of WhatsApp and Instagram, I'm going to put 14 here. What you're actually telling me there by putting the 14 there is that 14 plus the 8 that are already there, and that's 22, use WhatsApp and Instagram. But if you're telling me that 22 students use WhatsApp and Instagram, but this piece of information here is telling me that only 14 do, then one of us has to be incorrect. And in this scenario, it's you who is incorrect. You cannot put the 14 here because you already have 8 from the previous part of the question. So I'm going to rub this out, and our job is to find out, let's put a box here, what number when I add it to 8 will give me 14. I cannot put the 14 in here because my 8 is already here. If we were to just take this as an isolated question, this is something that you would have done in primary school. You can take 8 away from both sides, and what you will get is 6. So your box is going to be 6. So if we put 6 in here now, we can see that my 6 plus my 8 will give me my 14, which is my 14 here. Be very, very careful with that. That's where a lot of students, they'll put their 14 in where the 6 is, and they'll mess up their whole Venn diagram as a result. Be very careful with that. So again, I'm going to put my line through here, and we're going to move on to our next one. I'm just going to get rid of my rough work here because for the 24 students who have Instagram and Snapchat, I'm going to need my rough work as well. We're basically doing the exact same thing because it's the same scenario, it's just that the numbers have changed. So 24 students have Instagram and Snapchat. Well, Instagram and Snapchat is going to be this part here. Now remember, we're not going to put our 24 here because then we'd be saying that 24 plus my 8, which is 32, we'd be saying that 32 students have Instagram and Snapchat. No, we don't know what's going to go here just yet. Let's put a triangle or something that resembles a triangle. And we're going to say that 8 plus my triangle has to give me 24. If I find out what my triangle is, if I take 8 away from both sides, I'm going to find out that my triangle is 16. So instead of my triangle in my diagram now, I'm going to take that out and I'm going to put in 16. Again, I know I've said it, but I'm just going to repeat. The key thing here is to take into account the 8 when you are trying to put in your 24 students in this part here. This number here, which is your 16 and your 8 should add up to 24 here. And of course they do in this scenario, but you do have to be aware of that. Okay, I'm going to put a line through my 24 students that have Instagram and Snapchat. I'm going to take away my rough work lines here and my rough work over here, because the last one in this section that we're going to have a look at is the X students that have WhatsApp and Snapchat but not Instagram. So I'm just going to get my highlighter here. If we were to look at the X students have WhatsApp and Snapchat, well, WhatsApp and Snapchat is going to be here, but not Instagram. If we have WhatsApp and Snapchat, but not Instagram, then that means we cannot have any part of the Instagram set highlighted. So if you can see the intersection of all the 3 sets here, we do not want that bit in our set now. So all we're going to be left with is this bit here. That highlighted bit signifies WhatsApp and Snapchat, but without the Instagram set. So just this bit here. So just be careful of the wording there. Make sure that your words match up to the part of the diagram that you're looking at. So I'm going to put an X in here because that's what it tells me to do. And seeing as there's an X in there, and this is the part A of the question, if you were to guess, you could look into the future and you could make a really good estimate that in the B part of the question, they will ask you to find out what X actually is. In regards to this question here, we don't have to solve what X is just now, because if you look at the part A of the question and read it, use this information to fill in the Venn diagram below in terms of X. That means there should be an X in here, in your Venn diagram somewhere. And right now we have that X. The hardest part there was wondering where it went, and you just got to take that slow and steady and actually read the question in front of you as you're doing it. So let's put a line through that. The last thing we have to do is put in these 3 pieces of information. And again, we've got to take into account what's in the Venn diagram already. So already we've got our 6, our 8, our 16 and our x. We have got to be mindful of those. So let's just get rid of my circles here. I don't want those. My 36 students who have WhatsApp. Well, this is my WhatsApp group. And already in my WhatsApp group, we have the number 6, 8 and x. So I'm going to put let's go square again. I'm going to put a square there because that's the part that I need to fill in right now. Now, in the question, they've said that 36 students have WhatsApp. So right now, that's going to be my square, my 6, my 8, and my x, and that should equal to 36. Now, I want to find out what the square actually is. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simplify my left-hand side there. I'm going to say my square plus, well, 6 plus 8 is going to give me 14, plus x is equal to 36. If I take 14 away from both sides, remember I'm trying to get the box on its own. I'm going to get the box plus x is equal to 36 minus 14 is 22. And if I take x away from both sides, I'm going to end up with the box is equal to 22 minus x. So what we were trying to find out there is what the box was in terms of x. And that's what we've done. So the box is 22 minus x. Because the x was there, it was a small bit more difficult than any of the other parts to fill in, but we will be getting a bit more practice about that in our Snapchat group and also our Instagram as well. So 36 students of WhatsApp, right now we've got that done. I'm going to put my line through it. And if you need the rough work there, if you're making notes, I'm going to leave that there for a second, but so you can take it down, but I will need that space now. So what I will get you to is pause the video if you need the rough work, because I'm going to take the rough work away right now. Okay, we're going to look at now the 40 students that have Instagram, and this one is a small bit easier than the last one we've done because of the fact that in my Instagram set I don't have the x to deal with. The x is outside the Instagram set. So I'm going to use a triangle, and my triangle plus my 6 plus my 8 plus my 16 should equal to 40. So that's going to be triangle plus 6 plus 8 plus 16 is equal to 40. If I simplify my left hand side, I'm going to do the triangle plus, if I add up all those, I'm going to get 30 is equal to 40. If I'm trying to get the triangle on its own, I'm going to take 30 away from both sides, and I'm going to get my triangle is equal to 10. So in my Venn diagram now, I'm going to rip out my triangle and I'm going to put in the number 10. And if I add up 10, 6, 8 and 16, I will get 40. Last part I have to do is the bottom part, and that is the Snapchat group. So again, let me just put a line through the bit that I have done, and you'll notice that this is my last piece of information. So if I do this correctly, I'm done. So my Snapchat group, and again, I'm going to take my rough work. So if you need anything there, please pause the video because that's going. Okay, for Snapchat, my 54 students that have Snapchat, let's put, what do we put? Pentagon. Okay, my pentagon plus x plus 8 plus 16 should give me my 54 students that have Snapchat. Nearly ran out of space, but just about didn't. Remember, I'm trying to get my pentagon on its own, and I really should have picked an easier shape to draw. Pentagon plus x plus, well, 8 plus 16 is going to give me 24, which is equal to the 54 from the question here. If I take 24 away from both sides, I'm going to get my pentagon plus x is equal to 30. If I take x away from both sides, x, I'm going to get that my pentagon is 30 minus x. So that's what's going to go into place of my pentagon down here. 30 minus x. And right now, if you look at the question, well, if we put a line through that, we have catered for every single piece of information in the question. And also, we've done everything in terms of x, as in some places in this Venn diagram, there is an x involved. So just as a summary of that for your Venn diagrams, start in the middle, work your way out, but cater for the numbers that you have in your Venn diagram already. Otherwise, you will end up in trouble. Okay, if we have a look at the B part of our question to finish that off, it tells me that there are 80 students in total in 6th year in the school. So find the value of x. Well, you've done all the hard work here. And if you look at all the numbers that you've put into your Venn diagram, they should all add up to the 80 students that are in 6th year. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that, well, the 80 students should be equal to, and I wonder what's the best way of doing this. I don't want to pick a number twice. So I'm going to say 22 minus x plus 6 plus 8. So I've underlined the ones that I've used. 22 minus x plus 6 plus 8. 22 minus x plus 6 plus 8. Plus 10 plus 16 plus x. Plus 10 plus 16 plus x. Plus 30 minus x. Plus 30 minus x. And is that everything? Have I underlined everything? I have. So all of those numbers, when I add them together, should give me my 80. And that's how that is represented in an equation or in a sum. So your job now is to tidy all that up. So on your left hand side, you've got 80. On your right hand side, you've got 22. You've got 6, you've got 8, you've got 10, you've got 16, you've got 30. So if you add all those up together, you are going to get 92. And then if you look at your x's, well, you've got minus x. I'll just put 2 lines underneath that, so to distinguish from the actual numbers. You got your plus x, and you got minus x. So if you have minus x, then you add x, you're going to get 0. And if you take away x, you're just going to end up with minus x. So 80 is equal to 92 minus x. If I take, basically I'm trying to get x on its own now. So I'm going to take 92 away from both sides. I'm going to end up with minus 12 is equal to minus x. And remember, I want positive x. So I'm going to multiply both sides by minus 1. And I'm going to get 12 is equal to x. So in regards to that question there, you've answered it, you've gotten your full marks. We'll have a look at the marking scheme in a minute. But the main thing there was getting all your information out of your Venn diagram and using this piece of information here in order to make this equation. Once you had that equation, the only thing you had to do was tidy that up. So that just works on your skills of manipulating equations. And x is equal to 12. If you got a negative number down here at the bottom, you'll know that that would not be correct, because if you look back at the Venn diagram, this x here, like that's an amount of people. And in regards to the context of this question, you can't have a negative amount of people. You couldn't have like minus 3 people that use WhatsApp and Snapchat, but not Instagram. That makes no sense. So in regards to the question, when you get your answer at the end, just make sure it makes sense in relation to the question. If it doesn't, like in this case, if you had a negative answer, maybe you've just made a mistake with a sign up here somewhere, it might be, it's a good habit to get into, and it's no harm in just asking yourself that, just to make sure you're not dropping any silly marks. Just before we go on to the C part of your question, I'd just like to make a note of some wording in your that sometimes comes up. If they're talking about WhatsApp and Instagram, that right there is what they're talking about. But if they're talking about WhatsApp and Instagram only, that means it's only now WhatsApp and Instagram. They're not talking about Snapchat now at all. So WhatsApp and Instagram, people who use both, people who use WhatsApp and Instagram, it's just going to be that bit there. So that only plays a big part in identifying parts of a Venn diagram. It's just something to be aware of. Okay, part C of the question asked us to put some context on the symbols in the table and basically convert them from a mathematical equation to what it means in English. So let's just read the question. The table below shows 4 statements. Each statement is written in mathematical notation and in English. So we have to try and basically translate between one and the other. So let's have a look at the first one. 8 is hashtag W intersection I intersection S. So 8 is the cardinal number of the people that are in the intersection of WhatsApp and Instagram, and also in the intersection of Snapchat. So just in some rough work here, if we were to look at, I forget the order of these, but WhatsApp, Instagram, Snapchat, I think it looked like that. If we were to look at what they're talking about here, WhatsApp intersection Instagram intersection Snapchat is going to be that part there. It's where they all intersect. And what this is telling me is that there's 8 people in there. So 8 is the number of people in here. So basically what we have to do is we have to put that in an English sentence. And our easiest way of saying that is that 8 students use, you could list them all out, WhatsApp, Instagram and Snapchat, but I'm going to say use all 3 apps. And right there, you have translated what this means. Our next one, you're given an English sentence and you have to work backwards. So 24 students have Instagram and Snapchat. So if we use our first question here to sort of help us out, we're going to have 24 first. So 24 students. And remember, we're talking about the cardinal number as well. It's going to be very similar to what's up above. Number of people who have Instagram and Snapchat. So if you're trying to figure out like Instagram and Snapchat, let's go back to my rough work here. Instagram and Snapchat is going to be this part here. So that's going to be I intersection S. Instagram and Snapchat. So if I go back to this here, I'm going to put in brackets Instagram intersection Snapchat. So 24 people are the amount of people who have Instagram and Snapchat. Just before I go any further, all these symbols and statements, they all refer to what we've done in part A. So let's just see if that makes sense. 8 students use all 3 apps. Well, let's just get rid of all my other, well, that was my X. Let's get rid of all the lines I don't need. The 8 there in the middle, well, that's the 8 people who have all 3 apps, so we were correct there. That's just showing us. And 24 people, the second one, statement 2, have Instagram and Snapchat. Let's see, 24 people have Instagram and Snapchat. Well, you might say there's no 24 there, but if you add your 8 and 16, yes, there is. So right now, like, this can really help us out. Your A part can really help you out with your C part as well. this part here. 10 is the amount of people, so the amount of people, your cardinal number of Instagram without WhatsApp in union with Snapchat. Okay, let's break that down a small bit. What we're looking at, this one here, and let's get rid of that. So Instagram is all of this part here, but without WhatsApp in union with Snapchat. So without anything in WhatsApp with Snapchat. So basically everything in the Instagram circle without these parts here. So basically just this part up here. So they've told us that that's 10 people. Let's see if that 10 people corresponds to what we did in the first part of our question. And if we look at this, there's my 10 people. So we've got to ask ourselves, well, what does that 10 people actually mean? It's people who have Instagram and have no other of the apps mentioned. So only Instagram, but not WhatsApp or Snapchat. So in this case, this is the people, so 10 people have Instagram only. Instagram. You could say 10 people have Instagram and not WhatsApp or Snapchat, but this is the easiest way of writing that out. Just in regards to those three questions, just before I get on to statement number 4, you'll notice that I'm always using like rough work here to sort of scribble out a picture of what the question actually looks like. And I would highly recommend that, especially with Venn diagram questions, because often it can be difficult to visualize. Like looking at this here, there's so many symbols going on there. And if you were to try to visualize that without drawing a picture, I would find it very difficult, and I've been teaching maths for years, so I wouldn't expect my students to be able to visualize that either without drawing a diagram. So don't be afraid to use rough work in your exams. There will be blank pages at the back of your booklet, and if you do need extra paper, ask for it. If you make a mess of that paper, make sure to ask for more. You're entitled to as much paper as you need. So my key point there is use as much paper as you need, and do make use of your rough work. So I'll just take that away now. The last one here is more students have Snapchat than have WhatsApp. Okay, well, we're talking about the amount of students. So we're going to have like the amount of students who have Snapchat and the amount of students who have WhatsApp. Now, in maths, more than. Do we have a symbol for more than? If you can't remember, I'll just jog your mind back to inequalities, the greater than and less than signs. And if we are trying to use those symbols to say that Snapchat have more than WhatsApp, we are going to point the arrow this way. And the way I learned this in school was, if this was a crocodile, this inequality sign, that would be the crocodile's eyes, that would be his teeth, and he always eats the bigger thing. So right now he's eating the amount of people who have Snapchat, because more students have Snapchat than WhatsApp. So that brought in a small bit of your inequalities knowledge as well. So yeah, a bit of a crossover question there. The number of students who have Snapchat is more than the number of people who have WhatsApp. Okay, let's take all of our part A, B and C together now and have a look at the marking scheme, see how we got on. For question 6A, we got all of this. I think I've covered everything in my explanation there, so yeah, no point in dwelling on that question. The part B was just figuring out what my equation was. You'll notice they've simplified a small bit here. They still get the same answer, but their first line was a small bit different to ours. That's because they've added a few numbers together from the very start. That's fine. And here for this question, you'll notice we got all of those answers as well. Just one thing down here, I like looking at what your full credit minus 1. So that means you're 15, you're not getting your 15, you're getting your 14 marks if you forgot your hashtag when you're talking, as in your cardinal number, which is your amount of people in set A. When you're talking about the amount of people in a set, you do have to use the hashtag symbol. So just be careful there. And there was a clue for that. In your statement 1, they used the hashtag there, and they were talking about the amount of people who had 3 apps. So you should be using the hashtag symbol for your cardinal number all the way through there as well. So just something to be aware of. If you want to have a look more at that marking scheme, I would advise you to pause the video right here, because I'm going to go on to another question now. Alright, here's another variation of a question they can ask you. In 2019, question 5, they gave you 3 sets, A, B and C. A was a set of multiples of 2, which is like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, all the way up. Set B was multiples of 3, so 3, 6, 9, 12, all the way up. And set C is a set of multiples of 4, 4, 8, 16, all the way up. Write down a number that is in A, intersection B, intersection C. I'm just going to scribble out some rough work here. So A, B and C, the intersection there will be this part here, and basically that's a number that is a multiple of both 2, 3 and 4. So there's quite a few answers that you could put in your box here. I suppose the easiest one, the lowest common multiple of all of those is 12, but you could have had 24, you could have had 36, you could have had basically any multiple of 12 there in your box. That was your question A, fairly straightforward. So let's mark that off. Part B, explain why C is a subset of A. Okay, so C, if we were to write it all out, would be 4, 8, 12, 16 and so on. And A was 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. And I shouldn't close that bracket there. Okay, you'll notice that C is all your multiples of 4, A is all your multiples of 2. What is the best way of saying every element of C will also be in A? And I've just moved that so that I have a small bit more room. Every element of C will also be in A because every multiple of 4 is also a multiple of 2, or in other words, an even number. Let's make that a 4, even. You could probably have, I think once I write out your set C and your set A, it's easy to see that all the elements of your set C will also be in A. And because of the fact that A is all your even numbers, and you will only have even numbers here, which are multiples of 4 in set C. So I've just said that in an English sentence, but you probably could have done that in less words as well, but as long as you're getting that idea across. When we have a look at the marking scheme, we'll see that your wording here, as long as you're getting your idea across, you will be getting your full marks. Okay, so your A and your B part was just sort of definitions, just sort of seeing, do you know how sets work? Do you know your notation? Do you know what a subset is? The next part of your question is broken up into two. They put all of the information from the A part of your question into a Venn diagram here, and they ask you two questions. They say that because C is a subset of A, there are two regions in the Venn diagram that have no elements. Write an X in each of those two regions in the Venn diagram above. So basically they're telling us that there's two places in the Venn diagram here that we will not be able to put any numbers in. So it'll be empty, so we have to mark that with an X they're asking us to do. And they also tell us in part D that each of the other 5 regions in the Venn diagram has some elements. In each of these 5 regions in the Venn diagram above, write one of the elements in that region. So basically they're asking us to fill out this Venn diagram, and in 2 of the sections in the Venn diagram we have to mark an X because they're going to be empty. Now, I think the best way to do this question is to take our C and our D together and try and fill in some parts of this Venn diagram. Now, what I'm going to do is across the bottom here, I'm going to put the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, let's go 13, 14, 15. And I'm going to fill in as much of these numbers as possible, I suppose, until I have a number in 5 of the regions here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 7 regions there. Until I have a number in 5 of those, and then the other 2 regions are going to be my empty ones. Because right now I'm not too sure about what my end answer is going to be, so I'm just going to do what the questions is asking me and see if I can make sense of it along the way. Sometimes in your exams that is the best way to approach a question. Fill in the bits that you do know and then see if an idea forms in front of you. So for the number 1, number 1 doesn't really apply to anything here because it's not a multiple of 2, 3 or 4, so we can't put the number 1 in. The number 2 is a multiple of 2, but it's not a multiple of 3 or 4, so I'm going to put the number 2 in here. And I'll put an X through it. The number 3 is a multiple of 3. It's not, so it is a multiple of 3. It's not a multiple of 2, and it's not a multiple of 4. So the only place I can put the number 3 is here. If you were to put the number 3 in the middle here, instead, you would be telling me that 3 is a multiple of 3, 4, and 2. And of course, that is incorrect. So once you put your number into your Venn diagram, just be careful, make sure that it lines up with the context of the Venn diagram as well. Okay, let's put a line through that. The number 4 is a multiple of 2, and it is a multiple of 4, but it's not a multiple of 3. So the place we're going to put that is there. I'll put a line through it. Again, start here. Number 5 is neither a multiple of 2, 3 or 4, so we can't put that anywhere. Number 6 is a multiple of both 2 and 3, but not a multiple of 4, so that's my number 6. So right now, even though we only have 4 numbers in there, you'll notice that they're in 4 different locations. So just keeping an eye on our question here. My question C said there are 2 regions in the Venn diagram that have no elements. So right now we've narrowed it down. We know that it's going to be 2 of either this one, or this one here. So we'll keep going with what we're doing, and hopefully we are able to fill in one more of these situations here, or these areas of the Venn diagram. We've done number 6. Number 7 is neither a multiple of 2, 3 or 4, so I can't put that in. Number 8 is a multiple of both 2 and 4, so that's going to be here. It's not a multiple of 3, unfortunately. Number 9 is a multiple of 3, but it's not a multiple of 2 or 4, so we're going to put a 9 in here. Number 10 is a multiple of 2, but not 3 or not 4, so number 10 is going to go here. Number 11 is a prime number, so it's neither a multiple of 2, 3 or 4. And now we get to number 12, and if you remember back to the first part of your question, number 12 is the first number that we come across that is a multiple of both 2, 3 and 4, and that's going to go in here. Now, if you take what C is asking you, what this part here is asking you in your question, it says that there's going to be 2 regions in the Venn diagram that have no elements. If you think about it, seeing as we've filled in a couple of numbers already, and we can see that there are 2 areas of the Venn diagram there that are left empty, we can take those as the empty parts of the Venn diagram for our part C. And the reason for this is if you think about it, anything that's a multiple of 2 is going to go in here, and that sort of takes into account everything that's in 4 as well, so, or a multiple of 4. So instead of any of your multiples of 4 going here or here, they're all going to be absorbed by your multiples of 2 because of what we said in this part of our question here, and just our full answer. So our B part of our question was asking us in English, well, what's going on here? But this part of our question was asking us, well, can you show me that on a Venn diagram? Can you tell me what's going on? And this is their way of showing that in a Venn diagram. So just to finish off answering that question, they asked us to put an X in 2 parts. That's going to be here and here. And I'll just get rid of my ticks just so we don't have any confusion. And you'll notice by grouping together part C and the part D of our question, we have answered those 2 as 1. So the main thing for that question was to stay calm, to fill in any piece of information that you knew already, so that an idea formed in your head as to what the question was asking you. Also, taking C and D together really helped. And it's worth bearing in mind that sometimes, usually it's like your A part of your question helps you out with your B part, but sometimes looking ahead into a future question can help you out with the one you're on as well. Just something to keep in mind. Okay, we'll have a quick look at the marking scheme and then we'll finish up. The marking scheme was here. So for your A part, that was this question here. We had 12, and again, we could have had any multiple of 12 there. And for our B part, A is a set of even numbers, C is a set of multiples of 4. All multiples of 4 are even numbers, so C is a subset of A. That is basically what I've said here. And I probably use about as much words as I have there as well. So any other valid explanation is fine. Just make sure you're giving the examiner as much information as possible, I suppose, and you're being as clear as possible there. So for those 2 definitions, really, there was 5 marks going. And if you got one of those parts correct, you were losing 2 of your marks and you were getting 3 marks. So that would have been 2 marks down the drain, really. And that part 5 question A and B, they were okay. If you got those in an exam, you'd be happy enough. C and D were actually taken together in the marking scheme, and that's funny because we took it together as a question as well. And again, there was 10 marks going. You'll notice that we've put in a lot more numbers than was needed, but they're not going to penalise us there. They only asked for one number in each of those. There was some of them that we put 2 in, but that's fine. We're not going to get penalised for doing extra work in your exam. And yeah, again, the only reason you'd be losing marks there is if you have one of these numbers incorrect. So let's say like you didn't have your 3 here, you had your 3 maybe over here. That's the only reason you're going to be losing marks there. And obviously the more of those incorrect you get, the more down the scale you're going to go as well. If you want to keep reading that there, I would advise you to pause the video, but for now I'm going to go on to my key points. And your key points are as follows. Your curly or squiggly brackets can be used to denote sets, and they look like that, so something like that. They do take a bit of practice to get drawn them, so I would advise you just to practice them before you go into the exam. Know your symbols on page 23 of your log tables, but do be familiar with these ones also because they are not in your log tables. When filling in a Venn diagram, start from the very center, work your way out. Be careful with the wording of the question, especially the word only. And if there is already an element in the part of the Venn diagram you want to fill in, you must take it into account. So I'll just go back to, where was it? It was this question here. If the 8 is here already, and if there's 24 people in this section here, do not put your 24 here. You need a number that when you add it to 8, you get your 24, and of course that's going to be your 16. So that's what I'm referring to in my last pointer there. Okay, a huge amount covered there in sets. I think I've covered everything that I want, but I might do a recap video on the finer details in a little bit. So just keep an eye out for that. If I do one of those, I'll put the description for that, or the link to that in the description below as well. But for now, guys, thanks for listening and very best of luck.